A Roman emperor ran an empire of 60 million people. He had armies, senators, enemies at every gate. And when someone insulted him to his face, historians record something strange. He said nothing. Not because he had no words, because he understood something most of us have never been taught. The reply you don't send is more powerful than the one you do. Marcus Aurelius called this power over your own mind. But here's what almost nobody explains: the exact moment silence works and the 9 specific situations where it becomes a weapon instead of a weakness. To understand how, we need to go back to where this idea actually began. Stoicism began in Athens, founded by a merchant named Zeno of Citium, after he lost everything in a shipwreck. Out of that loss came a philosophy built on one core distinction: things you control and things you don't. Your reputation, other people's opinions, the outcome of an argument, none of that is yours to control. Your response is the only thing that ever was. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca each built on this idea from wildly different positions in life: an emperor, a former slave, and a statesman forced into exile. What unites them isn't comfort, it's discipline under pressure. And the version of this idea most people repeat today, just stay calm, strips out the hardest part. Staying silent doesn't feel calm in the moment. It feels like holding your breath underwater. Everything in you wants to speak, and that tension is exactly where the real practice begins. Picture the scene. You're mid-scroll. A comment lands. Unfair, sharp, aimed right at something you're proud of. Your thumb is already moving toward the reply button before you've even finished reading the sentence. That's not a character flaw, that's biology. The insult triggers the same threat response your ancestors used for physical danger. Heart rate up, focus narrowing, the urge to strike back immediate and physical. What the official record on Stoicism never quite says out loud is that Marcus Aurelius wasn't fighting laziness or bad manners in himself. He was fighting this exact biological alarm without knowing the mechanism, using nothing but repetition in self-observation. His method was almost mechanical. Pause, name what you're feeling, ask what you actually control. Gandhi used the same delay against far greater provocation: public insults meant to humiliate him in front of the country he was trying to free. He didn't out-argue his opponents, he simply refused to hand them the reaction they were fishing for. But here is where the story takes a darker turn, because refusing to react isn't free, it costs something, and almost nobody talks about that cost. The cost is discomfort held on purpose. Every Stoic story you've heard about calm, composed silence skips the part where the person wanted, badly, to say something back. Seneca wrote about grief not as an abstract lesson, but from inside real loss, and his advice was never feel nothing, it was let the silence do the sorting. Ask yourself this: if silence is just passive submission, then why did Nelson Mandela, a man with every reason and every right to demand retribution, choose it deliberately for years as strategy rather than surrender? That's the piece the internet-era version of this advice quietly drops. Modern culture treats silence as absence, going quiet, disengaging, no comment. The Stoics treated it as presence, staying fully alert, fully aware of the provocation, and choosing not to hand your power to it. Stay with me, because what comes next is the part that nobody talks about: the actual mechanism connecting a Roman emperor's discipline to whatever's happening in your notifications right now. Here's the core mechanism stripped of the mythology. Every reactive impulse, an insult, a rumor, an unfair review, a bragging coworker, runs on a timer. The provocation lands, and there's a window, usually only a few seconds, before your response hardens into words you can't take back. The Stoics didn't have a name for that window. We do. It's the gap between stimulus and response. Their entire practice was training themselves to widen that gap deliberately, every single day, until it became reflexive. The world was told that silence is weakness, or worse, that it's simply having nothing to say. The reality was the opposite. Every documented Stoic response to insult, rumor, or injustice required more internal efforts than any comeback would have. For 2,000 years, this got mistaken for passivity. Not on accident, because a culture built on immediate reaction has no incentive to teach you the discipline that undermines it. This isn't ancient history. Look at how outrage spreads today. A group chat, a public call-out, all designed to reward instant response over considered one. The exact gap Marcus Aurelius trained himself to widen in the Colosseum era is the same gap being engineered shut by every app on your phone. Here's the practical version. Next time something lands that makes you want to reply immediately, count to 10 seconds before you type anything. Not because 10 seconds is magic, because it's enough to let the alarm pass and the actual decision maker in you show up. Most people will never notice this gap exists. Now you can use it. A Roman emperor with an empire to run still found the discipline to say nothing when it mattered most. The gap he trained is still available to you right now in your next reply. If this perspective was worth your time, consider supporting the channel. Next time, we look at the other side of this coin, the moments Stoicism actually tells you to speak, and why silence isn't always the answer.